Long before empires left their stones in the soil, before the desert carried the hoofbeats of armies, Morocco was already alive. Its first children were black and brown Africans, faces shaped by the same sun that stretched over the Sahara, skin deep and dark as the earth itself. Archaeology remembers them in fragments, the Ibero-Mauritian tools, the Taforalt burials, but the land remembers them in full, in the rhythm of its mountains and rivers. North Africa is Africa. No map, no colonizer's word can erase that truth. The earliest people of Morocco walked in step with the rest of the continent, their dark skin a shield against the blazing sun, their bodies crafted by Allah to belong to this soil. They were the foundation, not guests, not migrants, but the very root from which Morocco's story began. Then came the Phoenicians with their ships. The Phoenicians were an ancient people from the eastern Mediterranean, modern-day Lebanon, parts of Syria and Palestine. And the Romans with their stone and chains, the Arabs with their faith, the Europeans with their hunger. Each wave left its mark, pressing new colors and features into the Moroccan face. Over centuries, skin tones shifted, features blended, and the palette of Morocco grew wide. But beneath every layer, the root remained African. This is Morocco's truth, a land of movement and mixture, a story of faces darkened and lightened by time, yet always tied back to the first people who stood on its soil. The beauty of Morocco is not in one shade, but in the way its people carry the memory of beginnings, black, brown, and enduring, through every empire that tried to name them otherwise. The land of Morocco in the late 600s was not quiet. It was a place where the desert winds carried whispers of change, and every mountain path echoed with footsteps of armies and merchants, strangers and kin alike. The Berbers, the indigenous children of the soil, still lived close to their earth. Some in the Atlas Mountains, wrapped in goat hair cloaks, others wandering the desert trails as traders and warriors. They remembered the Romans who had once forced their stone claws upon them, and the Byzantines who still clung to crumbling forts along the coast. But those powers were fading, their voices growing weaker. From the east came a new sound, the call of Islam. Arab horsemen, dusty from the Sahara, rode into the Maghreb, carrying not just swords, but verses, words of one God that struck deeper than steel. To the Berbers, these words were strange, yet powerful. A faith that said the poor and the freeborn slave, the chief and the shepherd, stood as equals before Allah. But conversion did not come easily. Some Berber tribes resisted, clashing with the new arrivals, their spears lifted against what they saw as foreign conquerors. Others listened, saw strength in unity, and embraced Islam as a banner to rise under. Around village fires, debates sparked. Is this the truth we have been waiting for, or another master in new clothes? It was in this atmosphere that Tariq Ibn Ziyad was born. The boy would grow up seeing tribes split between resistance and acceptance, hearing the Quran recited in Arabic while his people still prayed in their tongue. He would see the Byzantines retreating, their crosses lowered over coastal cities, and he would see the Berbers begin to fight not against the message, but for it. The world of his youth was one of dust and uncertainty, yet also of vision. For a child like Tariq, the path was clear even before he could name it. He was being raised in a Morocco standing at the threshold of something greater, called not just to survive, but to lead. Tariq's name traveled on the wind before he did. In camps and markets, Berbers spoke of the young warrior who fought with both courage and conscience. Word reached Musa ibn Nusayr, the Umayyad governor of North Africa, a man tasked with holding the frontier of Islam against enemies on every side. When Tariq stood before Musa, He was not greeted as an equal at first. To the Arab elite, he was still Berber, from a people who had only recently embraced Islam. Yet Musa saw something in him that others overlooked, a leader who could command loyalty, not by fear or tribe, but by faith. Tariq was entrusted with responsibility that few Berbers before him had ever tasted. He became a commander of men such as soldiers who spoke his language, who shared his scars, who had once been doubted like him. Under his leadership, these Berbers were not treated as shadows behind Arab cavalry. They became the very backbone of campaigns that pushed Islam deeper into the Maghreb. He fought not only with the sword, but with vision. Where others sought conquest alone, Tariq understood that Islam had to be planted in hearts, not just territories. Villages that once resisted began to submit willingly, not from fear, but because they saw justice in the way his men governed, discipline without cruelty, authority without arrogance. Still, the burden was heavy. Every order he gave, every battle he led, carried the weight of his people's honor. A mistake would confirm the doubts of those who said Berbers were unfit for leadership. Tariq carried this knowledge like armor, letting it sharpen his discipline instead of weakening his resolve. By now, he was no longer just a warrior. He was a symbol of what Islam promised, that a man's worth was not measured by his lineage or the color of his skin, but by his faith, his justice, and his service to Allah. It was this strength, this merging of soldier and servant, that would prepare him for the call that soon came. A call that would take him beyond Morocco's mountains and deserts, across the sea, into destiny. The year was 711 CE. The horizon no longer ended with Morocco. Across the strait lay Al-Andalus, Iberia, where the Visigoth king Roderick ruled with tyranny. Oppression weighed on the people, and whispers of injustice reached North Africa. Christians crushed by their own ruler, Jews yearning for safety, common people groaning under heavy taxes. It was then that Musa ibn Nusayr turned to his trusted general, the Berber commander whose faith had carried him through doubt and hardship, Tariq ibn Ziyad. With barely 7,000 men, most of them Berbers, he was sent across the sea to test the ground of Iberia. The crossing itself was a leap of faith. Narrow ships rocked on restless waters, and men prayed verses into the salt air. When their feet touched the foreign shore, the soldiers looked back at the waves, uncertain if they had left their lives behind. Tariq felt that fear, and he refused to let it grow. He gave the order that would forever mark his name. The ships were to be burned. Flames devoured the vessels that had carried them, smoke rising into the night sky like a second horizon. Behind them, the sea now closed. Before them, the enemy waited. He gathered his men and spoke words that lived longer than stone. Where can you flee? The sea is behind you, and the enemy before you. By Allah, there is no escape but in courage and patience. Know that you carry Islam with you. Its truth, its justice, its light. If you fall as martyrs. If you stand as victors. With faith sharper than steel, his men charged into the heart of Iberia. At the Battle of Guadalete, Tariq's small force shattered Roderick's massive army. The Visigoth king fell, and with him, the gates of Spain opened. From that rocky landing place, history took its name, Jabal Tariq, Gibraltar, the Mountain of Tariq. Tariq Ibn Ziyad had done what no man before him dared. With a handful of Berbers, men once doubted, he crossed the sea, crushed a king, and opened the gates of Al-Andalus. The world should have remembered him with honor. Yet the louder his victories rang, the quicker the whispers began. Power does not easily forgive the rise of an outsider. Tariq was Berber, a son of Morocco, not from the noble Arab bloodlines that ruled in Damascus. His greatness unsettled those above him. Even Musa ibn Nusayr, his own commander, feared the glow of Tariq's fame. When both men were summoned to the Umayyad court, suspicion grew heavier than any sword. The chronicles grow quiet here, too quiet. Tariq disappears from the page. No triumphant return, no record of command, no tale of his death, only silence. Was he buried in obscurity? Was he betrayed by those who could not bear to see a Berber's name eclipse their own? Did foul play end the life of the man whose courage had set Europe ablaze? History does not confess, yet the absence itself speaks. The Moors, Muslims of North Africa and beyond, would go on to shape Spain for nearly 8 centuries, building cities, gardens, universities, and palaces. Their influence reached deep into Europe's heart, and at the very door of that story stands Tariq, the one who opened the way. To erase him was impossible, for even the earth remembered. The mountain where he landed still bears his name, Jabal Tariq, Gibraltar. His legacy is more than conquest. It is the proof that Allah raises whom He wills. A boy of uncertain birth, perhaps with no noble name, grew into a leader whose footsteps carried Islam across seas. He was not remembered for cruelty, but for vision, for turning doubt into faith, fear into fire, and men into martyrs or victors. The silence that follows him is heavy, yes, but silence does not erase destiny. Tariq lives in stone, in story, and in the truth that the oppressed can become the openers of doors. His disappearance may be shadowed in mystery, but his impact is eternal.